role. And so with that, Mr. Holt, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Michael. Welcome, everyone. This is our, as Michael said earlier, our annual business meeting of the Greater Nashville Regional Council, and I guess our first virtual meeting of the annual business meeting. So I'm glad everyone is here today. And with that, we'll get right into business with our public comment section. So if there's anyone from the public that is attending this meeting today that would like to speak, here's your opportunity. And if you would state your name when you address the council. All right. If there's no one that would like to speak from the public at this time, we're going to go into item number 3 is our informational items. And Michael. Hello.
All right, thanks. Good to be back with you after the technical difficulty there. Thanks, thank you, Mr. Chair. So we'll get right into the business of today, starting with the informational items. Really, just one thing on the agenda in terms of information, and that is the presentation of our annual report. Anybody who's interested and has the ability to do so right now can go to www.gnrc.org/annual report to get a look at the report in its full format. But up on the screen you see image of the cover and the letter from the president. And in a minute I'll turn it over to our staff program leadership to walk you through some of the highlights that we experienced over the course of the last year and some of the activities that we're looking forward to in the coming year. But before we turn it over to staff, I want to just acknowledge the tremendous amount of work that was put into this annual report by our communications team, which is comprised of Michelle Lacewell, our Deputy Director and Chief Communications Officer, Shannon Llewellyn, our Creative Communications and Marketing Manager, and Michael Gill, who was a communications intern for us this year. So it's a tremendous report that showcases the good work that's been done by our staff and partners over the last year. And I encourage you to take a hard look at that today and in the coming days. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our program leadership staff. We've got, as many of you have heard us talk about before, we really have 3 main business lines at GNRC. The first that I like to talk about is our aging and disability programs. The second is our economic and community development programs, and the third is the community and regional planning programs. And then those 3 business lines are supported across the board by a research and analytics team and a policy and government affairs team. And so you see the faces of the leadership for each of those program areas on the screen now. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah Fowler to give highlights of the aging disability programs throughout the last year.
Thank you, Michael. Good morning. My name is Sarah Fowler, and I am currently the acting director for the aging program. We wanted to share a couple of our accomplishments from last year. If you're like me, though, it's somewhat difficult to remember much that happened before the March 3rd tornado and now the pandemic. But someone once told me that sometimes walking through difficult times allows us to recognize the good things around us. Unfortunately, we have been able to see those good things through these difficult times in our work here at GNRC. One of those being that GNRC was able to assist 30,000 individuals through our various aging and disability programs. We assisted with access to in-home care, Medicare counseling, senior center programs, public guardianship, legal services, and more. GNRC also received funding from Congress to support local restaurants to provide meals. Even though we did not have existing infrastructure or relationships in place for such a program, within 3 months, we pulled together an internal team to execute the program and contracted with 19 restaurants across all 13 counties to provide 46,000 meals between April and June. In this coming year, GNRC will be leveraging CARES Act funding to expand services to more senior adults across Middle Tennessee. We will also launch a new program that will provide grocery assistance to older, low-income adults through our area senior centers. And to the board, I want to say thank you. Thank you for serving your communities and for working with us at GNRC to do the same. We appreciate the support you offer as we work to make our communities better. And now I want to hand it over to GNRC's Director of Economic and Community Development.
Thank you, Sarah. Good morning, I'm Angie Hubbard. It's good to see all of you, even if it's virtually. We wanted to make sure you knew that we are still business as usual. And over the course of the year, our talented economic and community development team has supported mayors in their communities throughout the region by applying for, securing, and managing grants that further economic and community development. GNRC is currently administering $61 million in economic and community development projects for our regional council members. Overall, our ECD portfolio has brought over $100 million in investment to the region. Our work extends to assisting small businesses also. Through our various loan programs, we closed loans for 7 businesses totaling $6.9 million. However, these loans leveraged an additional $16.2 million in private financing and have created or retained at least 57 jobs. And that leads me to preview some of the great things coming this year. With nearly $2.5 million in CARES Act funding, we will be capitalizing a new revolving loan fund to assist small businesses that have been economically injured by the pandemic. You can look for us to roll out this program sometime around November. Also, with around $400,000 in CARES Act funding, we will undertake a major update to our comprehensive economic development strategy, affectionately known as the CEDS. And specifically, we will be integrating recommendations and resources to improve our economy's resiliency to future natural or man-made disasters or to public health crises. And then finally, we will officially kick off the regional assessment of housing stock and availability to analyze gaps in the market demand. And this will help us prepare local communities to accommodate the diverse workforce needed to support Middle Tennessee's economic competitiveness. We look forward to seeing you both virtually and in person in the coming months. And next, I would like to introduce the Transportation Planning Manager.
Thank you, Angie. I'm Sean Falzer, and I'll be representing the Community and Regional Planning team today. The Community and Regional Planning team has a broad portfolio of activities that spans transportation, environment, land use, and capital planning. These activities range from working independently with some of you through our local services, as well as working collectively with many of you through our regional planning efforts. And just to note a few of the accomplishments over the past year, we convened a first of its kind regional environmental roundtable this year that brings together nearly 36 practitioners representing state and federal resource management agencies, as well as local environmental experts. And that's to guide our work to develop plans and policies for growth and future infrastructure development. We also launched a new technical assistance program for rural communities with funding provided by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. This effort will assist 4 to 6 towns and smaller cities developing strategic plans to upgrade their infrastructure and community facilities to better position them for grant and loan opportunities. And then also in the coming year, we look forward to working directly with Mayor Kittredge and his leadership team to update the Rutherford County Comprehensive Plan, as well as assisting any other communities that are interested in contracting with GNRC for our support. We also look forward to completing our work with many of you that have been involved, area mayors, TDOT, as well as our partners to develop the regional transportation plan. And this is an important policy document that allocates more than $10 billion in future federal grants and matching funds over the next 25 years to help local jurisdictions, TDOT, and transit agencies as they work to address some of the safety issues around the region, as well as congestion problems. So with that, I'll introduce the Director of Research and Analytics.
Thanks, Sean, and good morning to all. My name is Max Baker. I lead the Research and Analytics team. We're a staff of 5 professionals that produce and analyze data, mapping, and key indicators for the GNRC departments. This year, we have completed an update of our 2 highest profile computer forecasting tools, including the regional land use model and the regional travel demand model. The land use model predicts where 3.2 million Middle Tennesseans are going to live and work in the future across over 757,000 parcels. This forecast is used for both regional and local planning efforts. The travel demand model predicts how, when, and where people will travel using over 6,000 miles of roadways and various transit systems. These results are used to evaluate potential solutions to the region's traffic congestion. In the coming year, in addition to supporting departments in GNRC, we will be working to increase public access to big data by expanding the interactive maps and data sets that we currently have available at www.gnrc.org/dashboards. And now I'll turn it over to GNRC's Director of Policy and Government Affairs.
Thank you, Max. Good morning. My name is Peter Westerholm, and I serve as the Director of GNRC's Policy and Governmental Affairs team. Like everyone else, we've had an interesting year, and we've had to adapt to a lot of change. But despite the virtual format, I'm excited to share some of the accomplishments of this past year and what we plan to achieve in the year ahead. Our accomplishments include, first, GNRC's Roundtable Network kept your community's IT and solid waste department heads connected during the onset of COVID. Roundtable members shared challenges, innovations, and best practices as each community strived to maintain operations. Second, GNRC completed an assessment of on-the-ground transportation technologies used to support traffic operations and regional mobility. The effort has produced ideas for improving the use of emerging technologies as part of the ongoing update to the Regional Transportation Plan. And third, as staff to Cumberland Region Tomorrow, we planned and executed the first completely online annual Power of 10 Summit. Finding a way to hold this event even during the pandemic was important to keeping the conversation around regional growth and development top of mind for CRT stakeholders. Now, in the coming year, the policy team will be working with GNRC leadership to design a new local elected officials training program to expand conversations and brainstorming around regional issues to members of local legislative bodies. I appreciate being a part of the work that GNRC does for Middle Tennessee, and I look forward to ensuring our efforts support the goals of GNRC leadership to improve the quality of life for our entire region. I'd now like to introduce our admin team, starting with the Finance Director.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning, Mayors. I'm Gail Wilson, and I serve as the Director of Finance. I want to tell you what's been happening on the fiscal side of our agency. The finance team accomplished a lot this past year supporting all these programs you've just heard about. But one of the things we're most proud of is the annual independent audit. After a series of recent improvements to internal controls, GNRC turned a proverbial corner and received our first clean independent audit in several years. We also upgraded our deferred compensation plan to give employees better options for supplementing the legacy pension plan that's provided through the Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System. But we aren't stopping there. In the coming year, we have big changes underway. The GNRC will be launching a new web-based accounting system that will automate several purchasing and reimbursement workflows. It will also provide management and program staff with greater access to financial information about their projects and grants. And now I want to turn it over to the Manager of Human Resources.
Hey everybody, I am Amanda Evilsizer, the HR Manager at GNRC. My job is to oversee the day-to-day human resource functions of the agency, along with providing guidance to agency leadership and support to staff. The biggest thing for me this year that I'm excited about is we are launching a new web-based software system to support our HR and employee development programs. This new system will improve the talent recruitment and onboarding process. It will modernize staff time tracking and expense reimbursements. It will also create more tools for managers to support and coach their team members. My favorite feature of the software is a new online learning management system that will be available to ensure easy access to compliance training and professional development courses. Next, I will turn it over to our office manager.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Angie Hutchison, the manager of Office Administrative Services, but most people just call me the office manager. As the office manager, I'm responsible for making sure the office environment is equipped to support agency operations and for the general supervision and professional development of the agency's team of administrative assistants, who I like to call the admin support team. The admin support team has worked very hard this year to limit the disruption of our normal business operations for GNRC as a result of the March tornado and the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. As GNRC pivoted to a remote work policy, the admin support team quickly turned its attention to implementing the necessary technology and equipment to keep staff productive. Over the summer, we have been preparing the office environment with personal protective equipment and safety protocols to ensure a safe return of our employees to our office. Now I'd like to turn it over to our Deputy Director.
Thank you, Angie, and good morning. I'm Michelle Lacewell, and as our Deputy Director, I serve in an agency-wide support role to our leadership team. I oversee the daily operations of the organization and lead the coordination and production of GNRC's communication needs. I'm incredibly proud of all the work that you've just heard about and all the work that our staff has done this year, and I want to highlight the work of our communication team members as well. Shannon and Rebecca are two individuals whose position did not exist within the organization just 3 years ago, but they have established great value and service to all the programs at GNRC. This year, we've increased the active number of volunteers by nearly 300%. A significant portion of those volunteers came to us to participate in the letter writing campaign to offer senior adults a sense of connection during the initial phase of the COVID quarantine. Through our creative services, we have focused on increasing collaboration with our program managers. This has led to innovative and customized marketing and outreach efforts that have helped us better target clients and clients who have benefited the most from our programs and services in our Aging and Disability Department. I'm really excited that in the new year, we're going to be focusing on creating more video, web, and social media content to promote our individual programs to citizens and stakeholders across the region. We're also going to continue to expand the volunteer program and help our network of local volunteer organizations come together to serve more people. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Michael Skipper.
Thank you very much, Michelle. I just want to commend the entire leadership team for their work and tremendous leadership this year. It's been a trying year, and here in a minute, I'm going to give you some of the highlights from my perspective. But before I do that, I'd like to go back to a slide I skipped over earlier, which I think is an important bit of information. It showcases the wide geographic distribution of the impact that GNRC programs and services, many of which you heard from our leadership team, have on Middle Tennesseans. And so this is a map of the locations of all the Middle Tennesseans and the individual communities that we were able to assist over the last year. And then the other slide I want to share with you is probably the most important slide in the presentation because the group of people that pull this off on an annual basis are on the screen. We're 80+ strong professional staffers made up of social workers, counselors, economic and community development coordinators, lending and credit analysts, local and regional planners, geographers, research analysts, policy advisors, volunteer coordinators, communications and marketing specialists, attorneys and legal advisors, accountants and finance officers, and least important, executives and administrators. So we have a tremendous team of individuals who put their heart and soul into their work, despite sometimes very challenging conditions within the office and out in the field. And they're to be commended for all of the accomplishments that we celebrate at our annual meeting today. So with that, we'll do a virtual round of applause to all the great work that our staff does day in and day out. Just couldn't be more proud of the organization that I work for because of the things that they do. In terms of sort of the highlights for me this year, this has been a trying year for everybody. It's been a year unlike any other we've ever experienced. Many parts of the year have been heartbreaking on a personal level, as we've seen the human suffering across the country and across the globe. It's been disruptive for businesses. It's been very high anxiety for our economy, and high anxiety for the public sector in terms of thinking about how it's going to be able to fund critical government services moving into the future. I know it's been trying for the mayors on this call who have had to make very tough decisions about how to manage the pandemic, particularly on the public health side of things within your communities. You've made tough choices to protect Middle Tennesseans that don't often come with the credit that deserves. And so that's not lost on me. I think my highlight this year, if I were to just pick one, is the opportunity that I had to work with city and county mayors across the region on a pretty regular basis there for a while, where we were convening weekly phone calls to coordinate conversations among the mayors of Middle Tennessee who needed an opportunity to share their experiences peer-to-peer. The conversation that happened in those weekly calls were very candid. They were very direct in terms of some of the challenges that mayors were dealing with. A lot of opinions about, what more we should be expecting from leadership at higher levels of government. But those calls also provided an opportunity to be extremely constructive with the state. We coordinated with the governor's administration on a regular basis through those calls. We had state legislators on those calls who were able to hear the concerns expressed by those mayors. And then my opportunity to be in that call also allowed us as staff to the regional council to make sure we were taking every opportunity to align the programs and services that we deliver to directly respond to the crisis and the eventual recovery. So that's what I will remember about 2020 in terms of sort of the unusual nature of it. And so with that, Mr. Chair, that is our presentation of the annual report this year, which, as I mentioned, is live and online right now at gnrc.org/annual report. And I'll turn it back over to you, Mayor Holt, for any further reflection.
Thank you, Michael. I'm not going to expand on everything you said, but I can tell you this is a year like no other year. We've all had the same, however, differing experiences. The current environment, which is unusual to say the least, it's been stressful. It's been tough for our communities and the people we serve. But I want to sincerely thank you, Michael, as our executive director, and the amazing staff of professionals at GNRC. I truly believe this organization, because of this crisis and the challenge that we've had to face, has been elevated because of your hard work and dedication and professionalism that make up the people who are GNRC. And, I'm always grateful for our county, city mayors, and city managers across the region who continually show a genuine interest in the advancement of our region by their participation in this dynamic organization. But having said all that, I'm very excited about the upcoming year and hopeful that our economies of the region, of the 13 counties, of the state as whole, the state and as a whole, our cities and counties will rebound quickly economically, and we can return to the thriving and prosperous dynamic region that we have grown to love and serve. So I want to thank all of you, and I truly believe this organization's strength, the things we've gone through in the past, strengthen us to be able to face these challenges. So having said that, We're going to move on to our business items. And Michael, I'm going to turn that back over to you.
Thanks again, Mr. Chair. So at this time, I'd like to go ahead and do a presentation of our annual work program and the proposed budget for the federal fiscal year 2020-2021. Quick plug for the document that I'm going to be referencing. It is available online at gnrc.org/annual budget. Again, this was a link that was included in your packet, so hopefully you've had a chance to go through the material. If not, I'll go ahead and present it, and then I'll be around for any questions or comments that members have prior to the adoption. So first document I want to mention here is the annual work program budget. And what you can find in here is information about GNRC, the state and federal designations that we carry, and there are numerous. A couple of these include we're the designated economic development district for Middle Tennessee. That's a designation that's bestowed by the U.S. Department of Commerce, Economic Development Administration. We're the designated metropolitan planning organization on behalf of the Nashville area and the 7 counties that are part of that planning area. That's a designation that is put out by the U.S. Department of Transportation and certified by the Tennessee Department of Transportation. We're a certified development company through our Cumberland Area Development Corporation, which is the U.S. SBA designation for supporting their small business lending programs. And we're the Area Agency on Aging and Disability, which is a designation out of the United States Department of Health and Human Services, which is the way they coordinate the federal investments into aging and disability services. And our role being designated as these, being identified with these designations is that, what they have in common is that our board of mayors and county executives is being empowered by the federal government to decide how to invest the federal grants that are being made available through those programs and the way that you think is best for Middle Tennessee. So if I were to put GNRC in a nutshell, I would say your role as a council body and through your executive board is to take the millions and sometimes billions of dollars that are coming to our region and decide exactly how it's going to be spent. So this is delegated authority that Congress has provided starting in the 60s that has really empowered local communities to make decisions for themselves. So I'm getting a note that my screen is going black. So let me pause for one moment. I need to do one trick with my internet connection. Give me 30 seconds and I'll be right back with you. Okay, I believe I should be up and running again. Michelle, let me come to you just for confirmation.
I see your avatar.
Do you see you do not see the slide though?
I do see a slide, sorry, yes. I see a slide.
Okay. Yeah, I do not have video at the moment, but hopefully that comes back. So again, thanks for your patience, everyone. I think I was just sort of wrapping up my remarks about the importance of the role you play as members of the council in directing those federal investments in the Middle Tennessee communities. And it's even more important than that because, as you know, so much of the state budget is following where those federal grants are going. So you're leveraging not only you're not only directing those federal grants, but you're leveraging the state money that comes along with it. And within this annual work program, you'll be able to find the program descriptions by department. So as we laid it out earlier in this presentation, where you heard from Sarah and Angie and Sean and Max and Peter, the work that we've got proposed within their programs is described in the work program. And then the document also includes key budget tables associated with their annual budget that provide a look at how we receive revenue and how we plan to use that revenue over the coming year. Again, this is available online at the link you see there on the screen if you are indeed seeing my screen. This is a matrix that I think provides a pretty good composite look at all the things that we do. I'm not going to dwell on this too long, but this is available in the membership resource directory that I linked you to earlier. But the work that we do is really diverse. And one of our challenges at the Regional Council is to make sure that that diversity is a strength. And we do that by making sure that whatever we're doing within, say, aging and disability programs is informing and being informed by the work that we're doing within the community regional planning programs and the economic and community development programs. And so it's really important that we don't stay in our silos as we go about our day-to-day business. If you think about some of the challenges that we're trying to address for older Middle Tennesseans, there are challenges related to transportation, right? So taking those experiences and weaving it into the work that we're doing to plan a transportation system that can work for everybody is the opportunity that we have at GNRC, because we have this diverse portfolio of programs and services. And then across those programs, we want to make sure that we're staying aligned with our policy and government affairs and the research and analytics. So that's a look at the matrix of programs and services that exist within GNRC. And there's some things that aren't on here. The volunteer programming that we do is, as Michelle talked about, not only supports this work, but also gives back to local communities in a way that is unique to the specific needs of those populations. In terms of our budgeting, I got this one slide here that kind of gives an overview of how our budgeting process works. So our agency operates on a state fiscal year, which is July through June, like many of you, but our annual work program and budget is adopted each September, so at the end of the first quarter of our fiscal year. And this is just the history and the tradition of GNRC that was initially laid out for us in the enabling legislation, with the thinking being that because of the significant contribution to our budget that we get from the federal grants, that we needed to delay through the summer in order to get a clear picture of the revenue that we're going to have for the coming year. And so this is a practice that I don't necessarily advocate for, but it's just one that's just been our tradition. So anybody who's interested in knowing why we adopt our budget so sort of late into the budget year, that's the explanation for that practice. That said, we do look at budgeting issues starting in February, when we start talking about anticipated revenue and how our dues might play into the mix. And then by June, we're in a position to adopt a continuation budget that will fund operations up until the point we have the new annual budget in place. One more note about the annual budget is once it is adopted here today, fingers crossed, it will become retroactive, and we'll reset the financial reporting to account for the revenue that was approved today all the way back to July 1. So we have a seamless accounting of the expenditures that we incur related to this budget through June 30th of next year. Before I get into the specific presentation or specific information about the proposed budget, I think it's important to zoom out a little bit and make sure everybody has an opportunity to see the general flow of revenue through our organization. So in a typical year, at least more recently, we have a $15 million annual operating budget. 59% of that money is coming from federal grants. Of that, most of that is coming through state agencies. So it's pass-through money that state agencies get that come directly to GNRC, but it's federal money. A little bit of that federal money is contracted directly to us. The relationship that we have with the Economic Development Administration at the federal level is really the only example of that. Most of our federal funds flow through a state agency. 59% money in from the feds. Then 25% of our money comes from state funds. Most of that is coming from state grant programs. So these are grant programs that are aimed at investing in local communities. And our role typically is that we're hired by the state to be an extension of their staff and their capacity to deliver those programs in the customized way that they need to be delivered within Middle Tennessee. So 24% of our overall funding is coming from state grant programs. And then a little bit less than 1% of our money comes from the from a direct allocation from the budget that is approved by the General Assembly. And this is money that is mandated by state law. It's our share of the development district money that comes from the state budget. And typically we're getting, you know, and the legislature, the law mandates that we get about $200,000 a year from the state from the budget. We get a little bit less than that this year, and I'll explain that in a minute. But this money that we get from the state budget is based on a formula that provides funding based on what our membership dues rate is. And so we are the highest tier in that formula. And so we receive the most amount of money we possibly can from the state government through the budget allocation. And then 16% of our annual operating revenue comes from locally generated funding. 4% of our total revenue comes from membership dues. We're talking on the order of about $650,000 come from membership dues. And then we have program dues. So these are dues that members of the regional council who participate in specialized programs, say like the Metropolitan Planning Organization program, they also pay dues to provide matching dollars to the federal grants that we're getting to carry out that programming. And then we also have 9% of our revenue coming from program revenue, and this would be the fee-for-service work that we do. If you don't know, one of the fun facts about the Greater Nashville Regional Council is on top of being a governmental entity that that sort of carries out public service, we also are very entrepreneurial and serve as consultants to some of the local communities on a contract basis. So we negotiate a contract and we get a fee for that service, which will offset the cost of the work that we do there. But I like to think that the most important element of that is that we're helping to develop local plans and programs that are going to be extremely consistent within the regional framework. And then we're also able to diversify the funding coming into the regional council, which helps us hire high caliber staff who are given the opportunity to work on a diverse array of programming. And so it's sort of this rising tide for the entire organization to focus on our government work because we have this fee-for-service work on the table as well. So let's look at our revenue in terms of where the money is spent each year. 61% of this money is going directly internally into the organization to pay for our staff salaries and benefits and the other direct costs associated with running our organization. 5% of it goes to office leases and technology, and then 11% of that is going to contracted services. And that would be largely the consultant projects that we do, particularly in the planning side of our shop. So the big transportation studies, for example, would be in that category. But we contract out some administrative services like payroll, and so that would be included in that category. But what I'm most impressed about our annual budget is that a good 40% of our money is going straight through us and out the door as a direct investment into Middle Tennessee communities and Middle Tennesseans on an individual basis. The majority of that is through our aging disability programs, where we will pass that money on. It's at your discretion, but it passes on to the Mid-Cumberland HRA to support the work that they're doing with senior adults across Middle Tennessee, but also Metro Social Services to focus on the needs within Davidson County. And then a lot of that money is going directly to supporting in-home services of older adults across Middle Tennessee who have qualified for that assistance. We also allocate money to housing grants. So we're paying to repair homes across Middle Tennessee. We're paying to integrate arts into communities through the Arts Building Communities program out of the Arts Commission. We're also administering and allocating tourism grants to help support the marketing of tourism assets across Middle Tennessee as we integrate that into our economic development strategy. So let's look at where our money is coming from and where it's going. Before I leave this slide, take a look at the state funding partners and the federal funding partners that make this budget possible. So if you didn't know this before, I hope one of your key takeaways today is that we have a lot of investors at both the state and federal level who rely on the work that our staff does to make their programs more impactful within our communities. Moving on to the issue of membership dues. I know this is on everybody's mind. This has been a tough year for us all. And so I wanted to, before I get into the budget proposal for dues, I want to just remind everybody what our dues look like. And so that of that $15 million budget that I just described, about 4% or around $650,000 is coming directly from local city and county governments through an assessment of 31 cents per capita based on the most recently published census estimates. And so you're paying into our budget collectively about $650,000 a year. And the way we use this money is also shown on the slide. And these were the funding targets that we put into place with the council back in 2017 when we adjusted our dues rate. So we try to reserve 23 cents per of the 31 cents for programming and match. So a lot of the money that you're investing in GNRC is fulfilling requirements of the state and federal government to cost share on the grants that they're providing. So the matching funds is what the dues are providing. In some cases, we have to overmatch or fully take on the cost of a program that we're administering, but that would come out of the 23 cents per capita that we're assessing. Then we have these targeted set-asides that really help secure the long-term sustainability of the organization. We try to dedicate 2.5 cents a year to the cash reserves, 2 cents a year to the capital fund, and 3.5 cents a year for government affairs work. As you know, the work that we do in that space, not eligible for reimbursement by state and federal grants, but still an important function of the regional council. So we have that pot of money there to engage a consultant to make sure that we're appropriately working with the administration and the legislature on the issues that are important to Middle Tennessee mayors. So let's look at the general distribution of how we use the dues that you're paying on an annual basis. Moving on to the 2021 budget highlights, and so this is what we are proposing. So we are not proposing an increase in the membership dues rate this year. We did have conversations with our finance committee back in February when it was looking like a dues increase would be necessary in order to generate enough money to match the grants that we're expecting. I'll talk here in a second about why we were able to forego that, and it's a good thing because I know that would have been a struggle for many of you. But your individual dues may change slightly up or down just based on the most recent census estimates. So it's a 31 cents per assessment for you based on those estimates. So you won't see any substantial changes up or down, but the numbers won't necessarily match what you paid last year. We did see a 12% reduction in that state cash that we get from the budget. And this is critical because cash is king at GNRC because cash leverages grants, usually on a 4-to-1 ratio. And so losing any cash, which is the unrestricted cash, is critical. Unrestricted cash also helps to pay for things that aren't reimbursable. So this was a big deal. We did see a 12% reduction. This is really sort of the implementation of the governor's request of state agencies to cut their budgets back by 12%. I know there's been some media about this and some confusion over whether or not this was a mandate or a suggestion, but nonetheless, the contract that we're getting from the state did implement a 12% reduction. But the other big variable here this year was the infusion of $4.1 million in non-recurring funding that is coming from the 2 federal stimulus acts that were passed by Congress, starting with the Families First Coronavirus Response Act at the onset of the pandemic, and then the more recent CARES Act. Both of those have combined to provide another $4 million to GNRC. Most of that is going out the door for direct investment in our communities, but we were able to leverage some of that, which does not require a match, to offset the need for a dues increase. And so the first bullet and this last bullet are really connected in terms of the outcome here. So we're able to sort of rework the budget to play to the strength provided by this non-recurring funding to offset the need for a dues increase. Now, obviously, the operative word here is non-recurring, so this will be an issue that we need to address next year. But for the time being, we're able to defer that conversation to provide some relief to our local member communities. Moving on, looking at the expenditure side of the budget, it's been a tough year for everybody. I wasn't optimistic that we would be able to do a cost of living adjustment this year as soon as it set in. And then once we got into the budget, it became clear that just wasn't going to be possible. So there is not a cost of living adjustment included in the budget. And to be honest with you, we're like a lot of you, we're just in a situation where there's just not a whole lot of opportunity for merit-based or promotional increases. It doesn't mean we're not going to do our best to reward staff and promote staff where we can, but we're living within our means, if you will, in the same way that our local communities are. There are no major non-routine purchases planned for 2021, so it's basically what we put in the budget is what we think we're going to need to operate and to continue some of the projects that we have started in the last couple of years to upgrade our internal infrastructure to make us more efficient. All that said, I am happy to say that we were able to offset the disappointment of the lack of cost of living adjustments by including a one-time lump sum payment to staff in the amount of $1,000 per staff member. And the way we'll calculate that is staff members who were on board at the beginning of the fiscal year, which was July 1, who continue to be with us in October, will be eligible for a $1,000 one-time lump sum payment plus 1.5% of their annual gross salary at the time that the payment is made. So this is in lieu of cost of living increases, but it is generally equivalent, right? It's just non-recurring, and that's the situation we're in. Is it's just difficult to commit to increasing the base salaries, not knowing what next year might look like at this point in time. But staff has been through a lot the last year. They're generally underpaid, in my opinion. And we need to reward them for their effort. And so, we did as much as we could to make sure that that spirit was incorporated into the budget. Other bit of good news is that we were able to fully fund the capital fund, the cash reserves, and the government affairs set-asides that I talked about earlier. Those funding targets from our dues allocation have been met within the budget that we proposed. Last budget highlight, and my second favorite, is this $9.5 million of our $19.7 million in planned expenditures, or 48% of our money, is going through us at your discretion to local governments and non-governmental partners in the form of subgrants or small business loans. And so we're so proud of sharing as much of our operating budget as possible with the community that we serve. And this year, there's even more money being delivered to communities as a result of the CARES Act. So real quickly, these tables, I won't dwell on these tables, but they're included in the annual work program that you got in advance. Detailed tables that show where our money is coming from. And I talked through this generally a few moments ago, but here you see a line item by a line item in terms of the expected revenue, and then share of each of these line items, the share of that line item within its category, and then the share of that line item as a percentage of the entire budget. So that's a look at the revenue. The majority of our revenue is coming from state and federal grants. And then our program and interest revenue is the second biggest category of revenue. Local dues and cash contributions following just behind that, and then the state allocation at about 1%. So estimated revenue for the coming year is just shy of $21 million. This slide is presenting a look at the expected expenses related to the administration of the organization. So this is the salaries of our administrative support team, our office leases, our insurance, our auditing. So the things that support GNRC as a whole. We expect that to come in at about $2.4 million in expenses this year. We also have the cash account, which I mentioned earlier. So this is our capital fund, cash reserves, government affairs, as well as we have some money in a couple of line items, interest expenses that aren't reimbursable by grants. And then we've got a little bit of parking that we don't charge the grants that we include in the cash account, and then some miscellaneous money that we use for staff outings and team building exercises that just we don't want to include in our indirect cost rate that's charged to grants. So that's what's in the cash account column. The projected indirect cost rate this year is 41%. So our administrative expenses are essentially 41% of our total program salaries, which is a number that has been declining over the years, at least since 2016, and this year is no exception. We were able to push that admin rate down a little bit lower. I think we're in a really healthy spot now at that 41%. So indirect cost rate, 41% of our total direct program salaries, and you can see there the ratio between those. Looking ahead to the program salaries, we're now looking at budget expenses by program. You see the personnel expenses for aging and disability services, community and regional planning, and economic and community development, as well as the other direct costs for each of those programs. Then you see at the indirect cost row, at the first sort of horizontal total in this table is the sort of the distribution or administrative expenses according to each of those program areas. Budgeted expenditures of $19.7 million this year, and I'll reconcile that with the revenue for you here in just one moment. So again, here is a look at the revenue table that I've just walked you through. And what I'm now showing you is the remaining balance on the year. We've got total revenue of just under 21 million, programmed expenditures of just under 19.8 million. We have a cash account, programmed expenditures in the cash account of 107,000. Again, this is the cash reserves, the government affairs, and those things that get charged to cash. So that leaves a remaining balance of $250,000 on the year. I always like to stress, though, that this is not a surplus that will just roll into our reserves. A lot of this is going to be grant money that it's going to be in our best interest to draw fully all the way down. So this is not a surplus. We're going to make every effort to get this number to zero. Gail and I, our finance director, when we put together our budget, we don't like the budget to zero. We just don't want to be out of the gate sort of trying to rework things. And so we leave a little bit of cushion, but as we get through the year, we'll make sure that this money gets put to use before the end of the fiscal year. So one more table before I turn it over to the chair, and that is a look at how this year's budget compares to the proposal we made last year. And there are some differences, although it's a little bit difficult given the reliance that we have on federal grants, and sometimes those fluctuate greatly. Sometimes the percentages look really crazy year to year, but there are a couple of highlighted differences that are meaningful. We have a 9% increase in salaries and fringe benefits, and that is largely due to the fact that we're hiring some additional staff with funding from the CARES Act as we're being expected to expand capacity. So this isn't, as I mentioned, about salary increases, although there is that one-time lump sum payment, but we are expanding the staff, at least in a temporary state, in order to account for the work we need to do on the stimulus acts. We've also increased significantly the pass-through grants and the sub-grants that we make to the tune of 75%. Again, this is CARES Act related. And then the payroll services increase, I just wanted to acknowledge here what's happening is that we're combining our HR system and our payroll system into one platform. So we shifted the line item for the HR expenditure. And so that's why you see a tick up here in payroll. Periodical and data subscriptions, that is partly due to some reclassification of some of the big software and data packages that we purchase. Auditors have preferred that we record those more as periodical and data subscriptions versus software and devices. But on top of that, we are investing more in data and software to give us a greater analytical strength to our work. So there is an increased investment here over the last year, even with the accounting for the influence of that reclassification. So overall, we see a 33% increase in our budget. But again, this is entirely due to the COVID-19 congressional acts, Families First Act, and the CARES Act. So with that, Mr. Chair, I know that was a mouthful. I'd be happy to answer any questions or address any comments from the membership and route to the requested action, which is the adoption of resolution GNRC 2021-03, approving the fiscal year 2020-21 budget and work program.
Thank you, Mike. For us today, we do have resolution 2021-03. So I'm looking for a motion and a second. And if there's any comments or questions to Michael, We're open right now for those. And please state your name if you do make a motion and you do second.
Ken Moore makes a motion to approve.
Thank you, Mayor.
Paige Brown, second.
Thank you, Mayor. Before we vote, are there any questions or comments from any of our mayors or anyone at this meeting? If not, all those in favor, please vote by saying aye.
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 Is there anyone opposed? Or do we have any abstentions? If not, the resolution passes unanimously, and we're going to move on to item B, which is our authorizing additional contracting officer for the council. And Ms. Hubbard, if you are available, would you please take up this issue for us?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Hello again. This time I'm stepping in as my hat as interim general counsel to request the board's approval of resolution GNRC 2021-04. This resolution authorizes the executive director to serve as an additional contracting officer for GNRC and assign contracts and enter into agreements in the following instances. One is to accept funding from a public agency or a private entity to provide services that are consistent with the council's annual work program and budget. Another instance is to subgrant or pass-through funding made available to GNRC by a public agency with the express intent to distribute a share of grant revenue to subrecipients. Another is to amend contracts that extend the period of performance or modify other terms not related to compensation or maximum payment liability. And finally, to approve the procurement of individual goods or services that do not exceed $50,000 in support of the council's annual work program and budget. And I also want to point out that by this resolution, the executive director is required to be bonded in the same manner as the president, and also will be required to report to the Finance and Personnel Committee, at least on a quarterly basis, a list of any of these contracts or agreements entered into or amended under the signature of the executive director. So with that, I'm requesting the board's approval of resolution GNRC 2021-04.
All right, we have a resolution before us. I am looking for somebody to make a motion and a second if there's no questions.
Mr. Chairman, this is Joe Pitts. I make the motion to adopt.
Thank you, Mayor. Do I have a second?
Second, Jim Durrett.
Thank you, Mayor. Do we have any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Are there any, is there anyone who opposes, or we have anyone who wants to abstain? If not, the motion was adopted unanimously. Next item is the election of our officers for the year 2020-2021.
Mr. Chairman, could I offer a motion? This is Moore.
Mayor Moore, that would be wonderful.
I would like to nominate Mayor Paige Brown to be president, Mayor Bob Ryle to be vice president, and Mayor Joe Pitts as treasurer for this election. And I'd also like to make a comment if there's a second.
Second, Jim Durrett.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, Mayor Moore.
I could go ahead and comment, Mayor Holt, you're going to be now moving into the past president role. And with that, I think there's appropriate congratulations for a great job in your leadership role during your tenure as president, and we thank you for that service. But also, I think this is a great opportunity to recognize the superstar staff and the continued growth of this organization and how much we appreciate staff and the great work that they've done. So with that, I've done my job.
Thank you, Mayor Moore. I appreciate those comments, and you are exactly right about the fantastic staff and our leadership and our executive director. So we have a motion and a second. Are there any other nominations from anyone else? If not, all those in favor of the slate of candidates, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Congratulations, Mayor Brown and the rest of our officers, and I'm very excited about that. So next, we're going to move on to the certification of the executive board, and Mr. Michael Skipper, if you would take that up for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As we get into the conversation about the certification of the executive board, I just wanted to bring your attention to the slide on the screen, which is lifted directly from that membership resource guide that I had mentioned at the beginning of the meeting. It's a graphical representation of the full council body that is meeting here today. And you can see that it represents the entire region, city, county, city mayors, county mayors, the mayoral appointments that are made to represent minority interests as well as business and commerce interests, and the Tennessee General Assembly. A look at the sort of color coding by sort of the representation from each of our counties on the screen here. So this body typically will meet once a year for the purposes of the business that we're conducting today. And the final act of the agenda is typically to certify a smaller group of individuals that are a subset of this full body to act on the full council's behalf throughout the year and overseeing and executing the annual work program and budget. As we turn our attention to the executive board, I do want to make sure everybody is aware that every member of the council is encouraged, strongly encouraged to participate in these monthly meetings. The value that comes out of these meetings in the way of information and resources and networking is so much more important than any one individual's voting authority on the executive board, which is largely by the time we get to the executive board, issues have been thoroughly vetted through a committee structure. And so a lot of those votes are consensus, not to take any discretion away from the members. But the value of the executive board meetings that are occurring on a monthly basis is really that the information and the networking that happens among the mayors across Middle Tennessee. So as we look at the executive board composition, and this is something that used to be dictated by the enabling legislation and state that was codified in state law. A couple of years ago, we went back to the legislature through Representative Lynn, who sits on our council, also the Finance Committee Chair in the House. We asked her to support legislation that stripped out the specific definition of the composition for our executive board from the legislation and instead empower the bylaws to determine the makeup of our board. And so this is a look at the existing composition as it was originally designed by the legislation. It's still in the bylaws, but I'm saying this because it's our interest as staff to be responsive to some of the requests that we've gotten from members over the years to take a look at this composition. We have a lot of folks who want to be participatory in these monthly meetings and feel that this is too limiting of a structure to support that collaboration. So looking at what we have now is we have the 4 officers serve on the executive board. We have both members of the Tennessee General Assembly on our council. They're on the executive board. We have 13 minority reps on the full council. The 4 minority reps that are in the counties with the highest share of minority populations as a percentage of the total population are granted seats on this executive board. We have the president's appointment, and this will be Mayor Brown's appointment in the coming days and weeks for a large city representative. So she will pick one of the mayors from a large city to sit on this board, as well as a small city representative. And then each county, and I say county in terms of the area, not the government, each county has a representative to the executive board. And the representative to the executive board from that county is chosen among the city and county mayors within that county. And many of you have completed that process, and I have those names, and some of you are still finishing that. But once we have that full roster available for to publish, I'll get that out the door. But today, it's really the request is for the council to sort of certify and empower this executive board to make decisions and act on your behalf throughout the year without requiring the convening of the full council body. So, Mr. Chair, I hope that explanation wasn't too confusing. There's some additional information in the packet. And of course, that membership resource guide is a great look at what our executive board is, how it's composed, and what its duties are. With that, I'll stand by for questions and comments, and otherwise request a motion to certify the executive board to act on behalf of the full council in the coming year.
Thank you for that explanation, Michael. And before us, we have the certification of our executive board. With that, I'm looking for a motion and a second to approve that certification. Or any comments
So moved.
I have for Michael. Who is this again? I'm sorry.
So moved, Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a motion.
Second, Paige Brown.
Alderman Heather Hardwick.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. We have a motion to second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, vote by saying aye, please.
Aye.
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 Do we have anybody who opposes that? If not, that motion was unanimous. And we're going to move on to, if you don't have anything else, Michael, we're going to move on to our regular reports. So with that is the chair's report. And let me begin by saying Michael presented me with a plaque, and I want to thank all of you for that, especially the staff and you, Michael. But let me say that I am extremely honored to have served for the past 2 years as your president. But I'm humbled by the fact that I was able to serve with some of the finest women and men that I've ever met. I cannot fully express my gratitude and pride in how our county and city mayors and managers have conducted themselves during this pandemic that I can safely say that no one saw coming. And I consider to be one of the greatest challenges that I have had to face in my years of public service. I'm also extremely proud of the work that has been done by our development district, which I really believe has increased the level of awareness of GNRC and its importance to the communities that we all serve. We have an excellent reputation as a professionally managed and coordinated organization, and I have to give full credit to our director, Mr. Skipper, and our staff for that. You know, moving into the role of president has been challenging at times, and I want to really thank our past president, Ken Moore, for his encouragement, sound advice, and his wisdom as I took this role. And he has been extremely supportive. But you know, as we move forward, I'm excited that my leadership is going to be followed by Mayor Brown. Not only do I consider Mayor Brown to be a close personal friend, but I'm inspired by her leadership and her vision for not only her city, but our entire region. Looking forward, I truly believe our future is bright and promising. The challenges we are living through today, I do believe, prepares us for tomorrow's challenges and the things that we will face. In closing, I hope that I have added value to GNRC in our region. The professional women and men who make up this organization are truly dedicated to serving the people of the entire region. And I'm excited about the direction and future of GNRC. And I'm proud of my role as past president, and I will continue to offer my encouragement and support not only to our executive director, but our newly elected president, Mayor Brown. So congratulations, Mayor Brown, and thank you again for allowing me the opportunity to serve with you. And we'll forge ahead, and we'll meet the challenges that face us. So thank you all. And Michael, with that, I'll turn it over to our executive director, your report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really appreciate those remarks. They mean a lot to us. Hearing the feedback from each of you is so important to keeping us motivated and going the extra mile for Middle Tennessee. So I'll be brief here, and I want to give Mayor Brown a heads up that I'm going to give you the last word before we adjourn here today, so I don't surprise you with that. But with my report, you know, I really just want to sort of double down on the earlier remarks by Mayor Moore in honor of our president, Mayor Holt, over the last 2 years. It has been, you know, pandemic notwithstanding, a tremendous ride. We've accomplished so many things internally within this organization, externally with our partners. The list of accomplishments is overwhelming, and I tend to be the kind of person that's overly critical. I think people probably know that, overly critical of myself, and I really have to force myself sometimes to stop and take stock of, you know, how things are going. And moments like this make me very proud to be part of this organization, and very proud to work with great leadership like Mayor Holt. So I brought together some of our favorite images of Mayor Holt in action. Hopefully you can see the screen, but in addition to being a great leader, he's a great character. He's a great guy. He's a great human. He's an enjoyable person to be around. He brings humor and humility into everything that he does. And it's the type of leader that inspires us to enjoy our jobs and to think about our work as the community service that it is. And so Mayor Holt, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart on behalf of our entire staff for the great work that you've done over the last 2 years. So thank you very much. And then I'll close by also thanking our staff. In particular, I'll name a few individuals that make these meetings possible. Gail Wilson, the work that she does in our partnership to develop that budget is our budget's hard to do. We don't generate tax revenue into a general fund. We've got to basically solve a puzzle each and every year and rework that puzzle routinely throughout the programming. So Gail Wilson, I want to acknowledge her, and then Michelle and Shannon, who I mentioned earlier, and Michael Gill for their work on the annual report, which is such a good way of showcasing the work of our partners and our leaders and our staff. And so just want to thank everybody. I should be naming all 80 individuals, but I would start getting texts from you telling me to wrap it up. So I won't do that. Just want to thank everybody for a great year. I'm looking forward to the coming year. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to our new president, City of Gallatin Mayor Paige Brown, for the final word today. I think, Mayor Brown, you may be muted. A reminder that we are meeting virtually. Mayor Brown, I think you are still muted, at least on my end.
She is muted.
Yes, now I'm not. Great start, right? Hey, I really appreciate your words, Mr. Skipper. Certainly, I think we are all proud of this organization. Seeing the presentations by the department managers today, I was just smiling the whole time because they did such a great job, and it reminds us of the great work that they do, because there's so much that happens within this organization, and we sometimes forget different areas that are happening. So I do. I hope that this meeting today, although we are virtual, and I must say I miss seeing you all in person so very, very much. I will really look forward to the day that we are back together. Someone said earlier, I mean, this situation has certainly made us appreciate things, and you all are the people that I really appreciate, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Beyond being proud of this organization, I have to say I'm very grateful to this organization. I have certainly leaned on it so much, leaned on Mr. Skipper, leaned on other mayors, certainly Mayor Moore and Mayor Holt, and all of you. I have gathered help and information and best practices from. And so I think that this organization impacts us individually as mayors more than we probably think about on a regular basis. So the GNRC organization, that the staff that is the organization, I'm always so very impressed with the professionalism, the level of talent, the level of skill. I think a great team has been put together there, and you are our greatest resource. So thank you to all of the GNRC staff for all that you do. Thank you to my fellow mayors for engaging and participating. It is important that we stay engaged, and so I do thank you for doing that. And beyond that, I look forward to, with all of you, a better year, right? Surely we're going to get a break soon, but my congratulations to you all for trudging through, because I think that's all that any of us can agree that we have done at this point. But maybe in a year or so, we can look back and say we really did persevere. So thank you all for your contributions, your hard work, and I look forward to seeing you at the next meeting.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mayor Brown. Great words. Next is any other business that we need to attend to. Does anybody have anything?
Mayor Holt, can you hear me?
I can, Mayor Bogle.
Hey, I want to thank you for your leadership, Mayor Holt, and I also want to say the news coming from the Association of County Mayors that our thoughts and prayers is with the folks in Carter County on the passing of their county mayor.
Absolutely. Good thought. Thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Do we have anything else? If not, Mayor Moore, I'm looking for one more motion.
I love making the motion to adjourn. Enthusiasm.
I'm going to second that.
All right. We have a motion and a second. I hope you all have a fantastic day. Thank you. And hope to see you soon, like Mayor Brown says. Bye.
See y'all. Thanks.
Thank you.